I hadn't expected the evening to stretch the way it did. We were supposed to talk for a few minutes about a project she needed help with, nothing more. Yet her living room light had softened into that warm, amber glow that makes time feel slower, and she stood there barefoot, leaning one shoulder against the doorway, as if she'd been waiting for me longer than she meant to admit. Her name was Mara, 46, a calm kind of beautiful, the kind that made me straighten up without thinking, the kind that made every quiet moment feel like it carried something unsaid. I was 24, still getting used to the way my voice sounded in rooms like hers. Rooms where books were stacked in careful piles and a faint jasmine scent drifted from nowhere in particular. She moved through her own space with a grace that didn't feel practiced. More like she was used to people watching her and just a little tired of it. But with me, she kept glancing over her shoulder as if checking whether I was still there. I was too aware of it. "Tea?" she asked earlier, holding up two mismatched mugs. I nodded before finding the words. "Yeah, sure. Whatever you're having." She gave the soft laugh, a breath more than a sound, and I noticed her thumb tracing the rim of one mug like she needed something to keep her hands busy. Now we stood by her small kitchen table, the air quiet, the tea untouched and cooling between us. The steam had faded. The room felt too still, like the air was holding its own breath. "You don't have to stay long," she said. "I know it's late." She meant it casually, or she tried to, but her arms folded a beat too tightly. Her gaze didn't leave my face. Only when I looked down did she touch the edge of the table, her fingers brushing mine by accident. Or maybe not. Hard to tell with her. She always held herself like she was one decision away from pulling back. I didn't move my hand. Not right away. She noticed. Her breath caught, barely. She straightened, as if that tiny touch had nudged her balance. "Mara, I don't mind staying," I said. A small pause followed. She didn't fill it. She just watched me, her eyes warmer than the light above us. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with the way she looked at me, like she was searching for something she wasn't sure I had. She stepped closer, slow enough that I felt her presence before I felt her heat. Her shoulder almost brushed mine. She reached for my cup, lifting it maybe to taste it, maybe to give her hands a job again. But her fingers trembled just a little, and I saw her notice it too. "It's getting late," she whispered. The sentence should have ended everything. Should have signaled the natural point where I thank her for the tea, gather my jacket, step into the hallway, pretend the night was ordinary. But she didn't move back. She held my cup for another second, then set it down with careful precision. Too careful. Her hair slipped forward over one shoulder, and she didn't push it away. Instead, she looked up at me from beneath it, almost shy, which didn't fit the confident woman everyone else saw. She took one more half-step closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth from her skin, close enough that her breath brushed my collar. "I should say good night," she murmured. She didn't. Her hand hovered near my arm, hesitated, then lightly touched my sleeve. A quick touch, but her fingers stayed, resting there, waiting for something I hadn't said yet. Then, from the hallway, a sound broke the stillness. A knock, sharp, sudden. She froze. Her hand slipped away. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. And whatever she was about to do hung unfinished in the air. The knock at the door didn't last long. 3 taps, then silence. Mara held still as if the sound reached deeper than the hallway. I waited for her to move, but she didn't go to answer it. She just listened, jaw tight, eyes fixed on a spot behind me. After a few seconds, whoever it was must have given up. The quiet settled again, heavier than before. "Sorry," she murmured, smoothing her hair back. "People show up for the wrong reasons sometimes." I had a question on my tongue, but she shifted past me toward the counter. Her shoulder grazed mine, that soft, accidental kind of touch she never commented on. I knew better than to follow with that question. Mara didn't talk much about her personal life, not directly, but something in her posture told me the knock wasn't random. Someone familiar, maybe unwelcome. I leaned against the table. "You don't have to explain." She stopped, one hand braced against the counter. "I know." Her voice softened, That's why it's hard. A small confession. One she probably didn't mean to say out loud. I took a slow breath. We hadn't known each other long. Only a few months through a community workshop she ran. She taught writing. I signed up because I liked the idea of learning from someone who carried her words with that quiet confidence. I didn't expect to find myself watching the way she tucked a pen behind her ear or noticing how she lingered after class, pretending to pack up slowly. She had mentioned once, in an offhand way, that she had been married in her 30s. The kind of marriage where two people drift apart not with fireworks but with missing glances and mismatched evenings. She didn't say much else, just that the house felt different after he left. Too spacious, too tidy. She lived alone now, and sometimes she walked around her kitchen like she was still learning what to do with all the empty space. I wasn't better at relationships. My last girlfriend accused me of being distant, which wasn't fair, except maybe it was. I was careful with people. Too careful. But with Mara, the caution felt different, like stepping through a doorway you're not sure you have permission to use. She turned toward me slowly, crossing her arms. People talk, about things they don't understand. I knew what she meant. The age gap. The late nights we spent going over drafts. The way she looked at me sometimes when she thought I was focused on the page. I don't care what they say, I told her. My voice came out lower than I meant. She noticed. Her eyes shifted down, then up again, holding mine longer than she should. She took a few steps closer, stopping right in front of me. The space between us felt warmer, smaller. You should, she whispered. Her hand lifted like she meant to touch my chest. Then she pulled it back at the last second, curling her fingers into her palm. The hesitation hit me harder than a touch would have. I don't, I said, quieter. She exhaled, a slow release, and looked at me the way someone looks at something they know they shouldn't reach for. Her breath brushed my cheek. My heart hit faster. The distance between us held for a moment. A charged, thin moment. Then, without deciding to, I lifted my hand. Just enough to brush her sleeve with my fingertips. She didn't move away. Not even a little. She only closed her eyes for half a second, long enough for me to feel how much she felt it. When she opened them again, she didn't speak. She just stayed there, close enough that neither of us could pretend there wasn't something real pulling us in. The space between us held like a wire pulled tight. I wasn't touching her anymore, but it felt like I was. Mara's breath steadied, then slipped uneven again, and she looked toward the front door as if the memory of the knock was still echoing. That person, they come by often? I asked. She hesitated, jaw flexing. Sometimes. Too often. A beat. They think I owe them something. I didn't push. She didn't offer more. But the silence told me enough to guess it was someone who didn't understand boundaries. Someone who had known her in a different chapter of her life and couldn't let go of the old version of her. Before I could speak again, her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound made her flinch. She didn't reach for it. She kept her eyes on me instead. But the buzzing kept going, insistent, turning the quiet air into something taut. You can answer, I said. I don't want to. Another buzz. Longer this time. She swallowed, her throat tightening. I stepped closer without thinking, placing myself between her and the phone, blocking it from her sight. A simple shift, but her shoulders eased, almost melting for a moment. You shouldn't put yourself in the middle, she said softly. I already am. She looked up at that. Really looked. Her lips parted just a little, like she was about to argue but couldn't find the right words. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, too loud in the small kitchen. Then the doorknob rattled. Quick, hard. Mara's eyes shot to the hallway. My breath froze. Footsteps shuffled outside, paused. Then a voice called her name through the door. A man's voice, older, familiar in the way strangers sometimes are because you instantly understand their claim. She whispered, "Don't move." But she moved. She stepped in, closer than before, her hand lightly gripping my wrist as if anchoring me in place. Her body nearly brushed mine, close enough that the warmth of her chest seeped into my shirt, close enough that the air felt charged, something hovering just under the skin. We didn't breathe until the footsteps retreated. Only when the distant stairwell door slammed did she let out a shaky exhale. Her hand stayed on my wrist. A soft hold, thumb pressed against my pulse. She didn't seem to notice she was doing it. "Mara," I murmured, voice unsteady. She looked up, eyes deep and tired and wanting something she wouldn't say. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for half a second. A tiny, guilty second. She caught herself and looked away quickly. But the damage was done. My chest tightened. We shouldn't be standing like this," she whispered. But she didn't step back. I could feel her breath on my chin. Her nose nearly brushed mine when she turned her face up again. Conflicted, drawn, trying so hard to tell herself no while every part of her leaned yes. I lifted my hand, slow, giving her space to pull away. My fingers barely skimmed her arm. Goosebumps rose along her skin, visible even in the low light. "Mara," I said again, whispered this time. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, leaning the smallest fraction closer. Just close enough that if either of us swayed the wrong way, our lips would meet. But she opened her eyes with a fragile, breaking kind of restraint. "Don't," she breathed. "Not yet." Her voice trembled on the last word. And still neither of us moved. Even with the world knocking at her door, she stayed pressed against my wrist, eyes locked on mine as if I was the one thing she couldn't step away from. Mara stayed close, too close, her fingers still wrapped around my wrist as if she forgot she was holding me. The apartment felt smaller, warmer, the kind of warm that gathers at the back of the neck and makes every breath feel like a choice. She finally let go, but her hand drifted up, brushing my forearm on the way. A soft, absent gesture, like her body hadn't caught up to her mind yet. I could feel her trying to gather herself, shoulders rising, then falling in a slow, uneven sigh. "I can't keep pretending you're just someone from my class," she said. Her voice shook on the word just. I swallowed hard. "I never was." Her eyes flicked to mine, surprised but not disagreeing. Something in her expression cracked a little, like that answer hit a place she'd been trying to ignore. She stepped back a half inch, then forward again, conflicted in every movement. "You're too young," she whispered. "You keep saying that like it's the real issue." She looked away. "It is." Then quieter. "And it isn't." I took a slow step toward her. Not touching, just letting the space shrink. She didn't retreat. Her breathing changed, shallow at first, then deeper as if she was trying to steady something inside. "Mara," I said, and she flinched at how low my voice came out. "What? You don't have to be afraid of this." She let out a broken little laugh. "I'm not afraid of this. I'm afraid of me." A pause. "Afraid of wanting something I shouldn't." Hearing that, it did something to me. Made the room tilt slightly, made her look even more real. She wasn't the unshakable woman I had imagined. She was human, guarded, hurt, wanting something and trying not to reach for it. I lifted my hand slowly, giving her a chance to pull back. She didn't. My fingers brushed a loose strand of hair near her cheek. Soft, warm. She closed her eyes as I tucked it behind her ear. "Mara," I whispered near her temple. She pulled in a sharp breath. Her hand came up and landed on my chest. Not pushing, not pulling, just resting there like she needed to feel that I was real. Her palm trembled, then steadied against my heartbeat. "This is a bad idea," she said, but her fingers curled into my shirt. "Maybe," I said, "but not a wrong one." Her lips parted. She stepped closer, her body lightly leaning into mine. I felt the shift of her weight, the warmth of her leaning, the faint brush of her forehead against my jaw when she breathed out. "Don't say things you'll regret," she whispered, voice cracking. "I won't." "You might." "Mara, look at me." She did, slowly, and the look in her eyes wasn't careful anymore. It was raw, unshielded, like she had been holding something in for months and finally reached the point where she couldn't. She rose onto her toes, just slightly, enough that her breath touched my mouth. My hands hovered at her waist, not daring to take the final step. Her lips were a breath away. One heartbeat, two, Then she whispered, barely audible, "If you kiss me, everything changes." I leaned in, close enough that her nose brushed mine. "That's the point," I murmured. Right then, the sound of a key scraped at her front door. She froze. So did I. The turning point hung suspended between us, a breath from breaking. The key scraped again, a metallic stutter that sent a chill through the warm air between us. Mara jerked back so fast her shoulder bumped the table. The mugs rattled. Her hand flew to her chest, fingers pressing hard against the spot where my heartbeat had been under her palm just moments ago. "Who has a key?" I whispered. She didn't answer. She only shook her head once, sharp, as if trying to steady herself. Her breathing turned shallow. Not panicked, just exposed. The lock clicked, but the door didn't open. Instead, a voice filtered through the wood. Low, familiar in the wrong kind of way. "Mara? I know you're in there." Her entire posture folded inward, shoulders tight, chin dipping, a vulnerability so raw it almost felt like I shouldn't be allowed to see it. I stepped closer, instinctively, but she held out a hand to stop me. Not touching me, just a trembling barrier in the air. She whispered, "It's my ex." My stomach dropped. "Oh." She looked up at me quickly. "Not like that. He's not. We're not. It's just," her voice cracked. "He didn't give the key back. Said he would. Never did." The door trembled slightly, a soft push testing the latch. "Mara, we need to talk." A beat, then another push. She pressed a hand over her mouth. I watched her fingers tremble before she forced them down again and wiped her palms on her jeans like she was trying to erase the shake. I moved quietly beside her, not touching but near enough that she could if she needed to. She didn't look at me, but her body leaned the slightest bit toward mine, a barely there tilt that said more than any confession could. The voice outside softened. "I saw your light on. I know you're awake." Her eyes met mine at that, a flash of guilt, and something else, something I hadn't seen quite this clearly before. Fear that wasn't of him, but of the meaning behind me being here. "I should have told you," she whispered. "Told me what?" "That he still shows up. That he doesn't really let go." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want you thinking I'm a mess. Mara." I almost reached for her, but stopped myself. "You're not." She stepped past me, brushing against my arm. A warm, tense glancing touch that lingered longer than she meant it to. She pressed her palms to the door, steadying herself, forehead almost touching the wood. "I'm not letting him in," she said under her breath. "Not tonight." My heart hammered. I hated the sound of relief in that. She turned back to me, slow, controlled. But her eyes looked like everything she had been holding in was starting to slip. "I didn't lie to you," she said. "But I didn't tell you everything either. I didn't ask. Maybe you should have." The distance between us shrank again, even though neither of us moved. Her gaze flicked down to my mouth. Tiny, guilty flick. Then she pulled her lip between her teeth, holding it there like it kept her from moving toward me. Another push at the door snapped her attention back. But instead of stepping away from me, she stepped closer. "Stay," she whispered, barely audible, barely brave. But it was the clearest thing she'd said all night. The hallway fell quiet. The world outside her apartment waited. But her body leaned toward mine, just enough for her shoulder to brush my chest, just enough for me to feel the decision settling in her. "Mara," I said, voice tight. She lifted her eyes. "Decision made. Consequences forgotten. Don't leave," she breathed. And that single, fragile sentence pushed us straight toward the edge of whatever comes next. The apartment felt suspended in a breath. No footsteps outside. No voice calling her name. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the uneven rhythm of our breathing. Mara stood in front of me, her arms crossed as if she needed something to hold herself together. But her fingers kept slipping, unclasping, betraying the tension running through her. "You heard him," she whispered. "You know what my life looks like right now. Ido. And you're still here." "I am." She shook her head, half a laugh, half disbelief. You shouldn't be. I know. The honesty hung between us, warm and dangerous. She stepped closer, almost absent-mindedly, like gravity did the deciding for her. Her shoulder brushed mine. A tiny touch, quick, but I felt it everywhere. She steadied herself against the table behind me, hands bracing her weight. That brought her face inches from mine. Too close for easy choices. Her breath landed on my cheek. Soft, trembling. I can't pretend this is nothing, she said. I haven't been pretending. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. You're young. You don't know what it means to choose someone who comes with this much complication. Then let me decide that. She went still, completely still. I wasn't touching her, but my hands hovered near her waist, close enough that if she leaned even a little, my palms would find her. I didn't move them. I let the moment breathe. I'm afraid of hurting you, she whispered. You're afraid of wanting me. Her breath hitched. She tried to look away again, but my hand lifted without thinking. I didn't touch her face. I just hovered my fingers near her cheekbone, a question waiting for an answer. She didn't pull back. Her eyes closed for a second, long enough that I felt something shift between us. Something deep, something neither of us could pretend was temporary. When she opened them again, they looked different, softer, unarmed. Mara, don't say my name like that, she whispered, voice breaking. It makes it harder to think. Maybe thinking is the problem. Her laugh was barely a breath. Her forehead dipped toward my jaw, grazing it when she exhaled. Not a kiss, not even a real touch, but intimate in a way that left my chest tight. I don't want this to ruin anything, she murmured. It won't. You don't know that. You're right. I swallowed. But I know what I want. She lifted her head just enough to meet my eyes. The rawness there nearly undid me. Say it, she whispered. I stepped in, closing the last thin sliver of space. My nose brushed hers. My voice barely escaped my throat. You. Her breath caught. She didn't move away. Instead, her hand rose slowly, hesitating near my collar. Her fingertips traced the fabric, then skimmed the line of my neck. Just a faint touch, but her whole body leaned with it. That's why I asked you to stay, she said. Her thumb brushed my skin. I felt that single, careful touch like a pulse. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't running. She was choosing. I'm done pretending I don't want this, she whispered. My hands found her waist. Lightly, carefully. Her body softened into the touch, a surrender so quiet it felt holy. She lifted her face to mine, breath warm, lips a heartbeat away. Her fingers curled into my shirt. Then don't stop, she said. And there it was. Clarity, unguarded, undeniable, settling between us like a final answer neither of us would walk away from. Mara didn't kiss me right away. She stayed there, close enough that our breaths mingled, close enough that I felt her steadying herself. Her forehead brushed mine, a gentle nudge that felt like trust rather than hesitation. When her hands slid up to rest on my shoulders, she exhaled softly, and something in her body loosened. Not surrender, more like relief. You're sure about this? She whispered. Yes. You won't wake up tomorrow and rethink it? I've been rethinking it for weeks, I said. I'm still here. A quiet laugh slipped from her, warm against my cheek. She leaned in fully then, her body meeting mine. No space left for doubts to hide in. My arms wrapped around her automatically, drawing her in, feeling the shape of her settle against me. She fit there like she'd been trying not to. She rested her forehead on my collarbone, breathing slow, deep breaths. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked unguarded. Not older, not younger, just human, tired, wanting closeness but not knowing how to ask for it. I keep thinking I should be the responsible one, she murmured into my shirt. Maybe we don't need one tonight. Her fingers curled at the back of my neck, gentle and unsure. She lifted her head and looked up at me, her eyes soft, no defenses left. You make me feel... She stopped, shaking her head as if the words were too big or too risky. You make me feel like I haven't missed every chance I had. I don't think you missed anything, I said. I think you were just waiting. For what? She asked quietly. For someone who saw you. She blinked, and her breath stuttered slightly, the way it does when something hits deeper than expected. She reached up and touched my cheek with her palm, slow and warm. Not rushed, not hungry, just present. When she kissed me, it wasn't urgent. It was soft, patient, almost reverent, like she wanted to memorize the moment instead of rush through it. Her lips moved against mine with a quiet, aching need she'd been holding back for too long. I slipped a hand up her back, feeling her breathe into me, feeling her settle in a way that made the whole night make sense. When we finally separated, she didn't step away. She stayed pressed against me, her arms still looped around my neck. You know this won't be simple, she said with a small smile. I don't want simple. I don't want easy, she replied. I just want real. Then you're stuck with me. She laughed, quiet and warm, and rested her head against my chest. I held her, one hand sliding down her arm until our fingers intertwined. She squeezed my hand, subtle but sure, the kind of gesture that meant she wasn't going anywhere. For a long moment, we stood there in her kitchen, the dim light wrapping around us, both of us breathing in the same slow rhythm. No fear. No excuses. Just us. Eventually she whispered, Stay a little longer? I wasn't planning on leaving. She looked up at me again, eyes softer than the lamp glow around us. Good. I kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes, leaning into it like it was the safest place she'd been in a long time. Everything complicated, everything messy, just faded. And what was left felt simple in the way only something true can be. Together, warm, real. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?